Imagine being locked in a room with your worst enemy. They hold the only key. For 6 grueling weeks, you scream, you threaten, and you beg them to open the door. When they refuse, what is your grand solution? You pull out your own heavy padlock, slap it onto the door, and lock yourself inside. That is exactly what the President of the United States just did. After a disastrous 21-hour diplomatic marathon collapsed in Islamabad, Washington ordered the U.S. Navy to actively blockade the Strait of Hormuz, the exact same vital waterway they have been desperately fighting to force open. The immediate result? Chinese oil tankers are now sailing straight toward the blockade line, publicly daring American warships to open fire, while Chinese-supplied heat-seeking missiles are actively blowing American F-15 fighter jets out of the sky. Forget the political spin you hear on cable news. You are not watching a master strategy unfold. You are watching an empire commit the most spectacular, self-inflicted geopolitical suicide in modern history. To truly comprehend the sheer magnitude of this unprecedented disaster, we must meticulously retrace the steps that led us to this precipice. Let us begin by examining a critical reality that almost no one in the mainstream media is willing to discuss openly: the catastrophic diplomatic theater that just unfolded in Pakistan. On Friday, America dispatched its vice president to Islamabad to conduct the highest-level talks with Iran since the historic rupture of 1979. This was supposed to be the most intense diplomatic effort witnessed in a generation, a grueling 21-hour negotiation inside the Serena Hotel, and it failed. But you must understand that the Islamabad talks did not fail because the Iranian delegation was being fundamentally unreasonable. The talks failed catastrophically because the American negotiating team walked into that secure room carrying demands that were never meant to produce a viable deal. They were explicitly meant to produce a failure. For the entirety of those 21 hours, Vice President Vance focused his political capital on one singular issue above everything else. He demanded, without compromise, that Iran completely eliminate its entire uranium enrichment capability and hand over all of its previously enriched material directly to the United States. I want you to stop and seriously think about the audacity of this demand. Iran has been legally enriching uranium under the strict parameters of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty for decades. The landmark 2015 nuclear deal successfully kept Iran's enrichment levels capped at 3.5%, and international inspectors continually confirmed Iran's strict compliance. It was Donald Trump himself who violently tore that carefully crafted deal apart during his first term in office. And now, in a stunning display of strategic incoherence, he sends his vice president across the globe to demand a concession that is even more extreme than the very agreement he previously destroyed. But whose demand was this, really? Because completely eliminating uranium enrichment is not, and has never been, America's core strategic interest in this escalating conflict. America's core interest is rapidly reopening the Strait of Hormuz to restore the flow of global commerce. America's core interest is desperately bringing skyrocketing oil prices back down to earth and stopping the massive, widespread economic bleeding before the critical midterm elections arrive. The total elimination of enrichment is Israel's absolute obsession. It is not America's priority. For well over a decade, top Israeli leaders have stated publicly and repeatedly that they would vastly prefer to have Iran slowly moving toward a nuclear weapon while suffering under crippling sanctions, rather than allowing a rich, powerful Iran to emerge with all international sanctions permanently lifted. High-ranking Israeli generals openly stated this strategic preference on the public record even before the 2015 deal was signed. They fundamentally preferred a poor, heavily sanctioned Iran that they could easily bomb from the sky over a wealthy, integrated Iran that possessed the resources to effectively defend itself. And that exact Israeli policy preference is precisely what Vice President Vance carried in his briefcase into Islamabad. It was not a policy designed to end the devastating war. It was a policy explicitly designed to satisfy the demands of Israel. The sabotage was not merely confined to the negotiating table, it was broadcast live to the world. While Vance was desperately trying to negotiate, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu deliberately went on camera and publicly declared the campaign against Iran is not over yet. Think about what that timing actually means on the geopolitical chessboard. The American vice president is actively trying to negotiate peace, and simultaneously, America's closest regional ally is publicly stating that the war must absolutely continue. And the situation on the ground was even worse. While the sensitive talks were happening, Israel ruthlessly continued its bombing campaign across Lebanon, where hundreds were killed, apartment buildings were flattened, and civilians were massacred. This continued military aggression is the exact issue that Iran explicitly stated must stop before any diplomatic deal could ever be reached. Iran put their demands clearly in writing. A total ceasefire across the entire region, specifically including Lebanon, was their non-negotiable condition number one. Iran explicitly said, "Stop bombing Lebanon or no deal." Israel intentionally kept bombing Lebanon anyway, the talks collapsed, and then Trump publicly blamed Iran for the diplomatic failure. The hard truth is that the talks did not fail on their own merits. They were deliberately sabotaged. And that strategic sabotage did not originate from Tehran. It came directly from Tel Aviv. Following this orchestrated diplomatic collapse, on Sunday morning, Trump announced to the world that the United States Navy will officially blockade the Strait of Hormuz, the exact same vital waterway that he has been aggressively demanding Iran open for the past 6 weeks. He is now closing it further, and the whole world is about to pay the price. But this massive blockade did not fail because of bad luck. It was designed to fail before it even started. There is already a massive, glaring contradiction inside Trump's own government about what this military operation actually entails, and the blockade has not even officially started yet. Trump confidently went on Fox News on Sunday morning and declared to the American public that it will be a complete and total blockade, stating his exact words, "It is called all in, all out, complete, all or nothing." But then his own military command, CENTCOM, issued a statement saying something entirely different. CENTCOM officially stated that the blockade will only selectively target ships entering and leaving Iranian ports, while ships traveling to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE are perfectly fine to pass. Which is it, a complete blockade or a partial one? The president says one thing, his military says another, and nobody in the world, including the American government, knows what this blockade actually is. On top of this overwhelming confusion, the Wall Street Journal is actively reporting that Trump is also seriously considering resuming limited military strikes directly on Iran. If he actually executes those strikes, the fragile 2-week ceasefire is completely finished, and every single diplomatic channel that was painstakingly opened in Islamabad will close permanently. This is not a strategy. This is a man throwing things at the wall and hoping something sticks. As an intelligence analyst, I must give you the 5 fundamental, structural realities why this hastily conceived blockade is absolutely guaranteed to fail. These are structural realities that do not care what any president thinks or tweets. Reason number 1, this blockade ultimately hurts America far more than it will ever hurt Iran. Iran has been surviving under grueling international sanctions for 47 long years. The Iranian domestic economy has been squeezed, completely strangled, and starved of capital for nearly half a century. And despite all of that, Iran is still standing firm, still fiercely fighting, and still maintaining physical control over the Strait of Hormuz. Decades of sanctions did not break the will of Iran. A relentless 6-week American bombing campaign did not break Iran, and a poorly defined naval blockade will certainly not break Iran now. Now, look closely at the other side of this economic equation. The global market reacted instantly. Oil prices violently jumped above $14 a barrel the very moment Trump announced the blockade operation. Leading energy experts are desperately warning of an impending, catastrophic shortage of 7 million barrels of crude oil per day, plus an additional 4 million barrels of refined products. American consumer confidence just plunged off a cliff to a record, historic low, the lowest in the entire history of the University of Michigan survey. Not since 2008, not since COVID, the lowest ever recorded, and that was before the blockade even started. Demonstrating an acute awareness of this vulnerability, Iran's parliament speaker responded to the blockade announcement by posting a map of skyrocketing gas station prices near the White House on social media, with one chilling line, "Enjoy the current prices. You will soon miss $4 to $5 gasoline." He intrinsically understands a brutal economic reality that Trump does not. In a game of chicken, the player who can endure paying longer wins. Iran has been rigorously training for this exact scenario for 47 years. America has not trained for it at all. Reason number 2, America stands completely, dangerously alone on the world stage. The United Kingdom flatly refused to participate in this aggressive blockade. While Trump falsely claimed that the UK would send minesweepers, London publicly said no. Australia's Prime Minister openly stated that his country was not even asked, dismissing the entire operation as a unilateral decision. NATO has not endorsed it, the European Union has not endorsed it, and not a single Gulf state has publicly committed ships. Instead of following Washington, the UK is actively building its own massive coalition consisting of more than 40 countries dedicated to reopening the vital strait through diplomacy. That means 40 countries are actively working on a completely different plan than the American president. When your military blockade possesses zero allied support and 40 countries are deliberately working around you, you are not leading. You are standing alone in the middle of the ocean, wondering why nobody followed you there. Reason number 3. China has already ruthlessly called America's bluff, and this changes everything. On Sunday, China's Defense Minister Admiral Dong Jun made a definitive public statement declaring that Chinese commercial and naval vessels are transiting the Strait of Hormuz without disruption. He affirmed that China will honor its energy agreements with Iran and warned outside powers against interfering in China's bilateral affairs. Translated into plain English, China just told the United States, "Our ships are going through. Try to stop us." Furthermore, Chinese vessels have actively been paying Iran's demanded transit toll entirely in Chinese yuan, not in dollars. That alone tells you where the financial architecture of this region is heading, and U.S. intelligence has firmly confirmed that China is currently preparing to deliver new air defense systems directly to Iran, specifically shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles known as manpads. These are the exact same highly lethal type of weapon that successfully shot down an American F-15 fighter jet over Iran during the war. Trump himself publicly confirmed at a press conference that it was a handheld, shoulder-fired, heat-seeking missile that hit the engine. Connect the dots. China is actively sending Iran the exact same weapons that are currently killing American pilots. China is sending ships through the strait Trump says he will blockade, and China's defense minister is publicly daring the United States to do something about it. So what does the U.S. Navy do when a Chinese oil tanker approaches the blockade line? Board it and risk a military confrontation with the world's second-largest navy? Sink it and commit an act of war against a nuclear power? Let it through and watch every country reflag its tankers under Chinese registration, turning the blockade into a joke? And here is the true geopolitical nightmare. If the United States establishes the precedent that a naval power can blockade an international strait, China will weaponize that exact precedent to blockade Taiwan. The U.S. would be handing China the legal and strategic framework to do the one thing America has been trying to prevent for 70 years. Reason number 4, Iran possesses devastating escalation options that America simply cannot match. The IRGC warned on Sunday that any military vessel approaching the Strait of Hormuz will be dealt with harshly and decisively. Iran's senior military advisor stated plainly that the nation possesses great untapped leverage to counter the blockade. I believe they were talking about the Red Sea. Iran's allies, the Houthis in Yemen, control the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the southern entrance to the Red Sea, a waterway that carries another 12 to 15% of global trade. If Trump blockades Hormuz, Iran picks up the phone and the Houthis close the Red Sea. You suddenly have two of the world's most critical maritime choke points shut down simultaneously. Oil disappears from the market entirely, fertilizer stops flowing, food prices spike globally, and the world enters a depression. The American president is playing on one board, Iran is playing on two, and Iran has a piece on the second board that America cannot reach. Reason number 5, the ultimate, undeniable real winner of this disastrous blockade is Russia. Russia's oil does not transit Hormuz. Every barrel trapped in the Persian Gulf is a barrel the world has to replace, and the replacement comes from Russia. Before this war started, Russia's oil revenues were collapsing and the Kremlin was preparing budget cuts. Then the war started and Russia's oil tax revenue doubled to $9 billion in a single month. The blockade will push prices even higher, and Russia will make even more. And here is the part that should make every American furious. Trump initially lifted sanctions on Russian oil to keep global prices down during the war. Now, Trump is blockading Hormuz, which pushes global prices back up. The net effect is that Russia sells more oil at higher prices with explicit American permission. The country whose satellites actively helped Iran locate and destroy American military aircraft is being financially rewarded by the American president, who claims to be winning this war. This massive blockade is absolutely not about calculated military strategy. It is about fragile psychology. Trump sent his vice president to negotiate. Israel's demands killed the talks. Iran said no, and Trump, who has built his entire identity on winning and dominance, just got publicly rejected. On Fox News Sunday morning, Trump boasted, "I could take out Iran in one day. In 1 hour, I could have their entire energy infrastructure gone," before ominously adding, "The only thing left is their water, which would be very devastating to hit." The President of the United States is fantasizing on live television about destroying a nation's water supply on the same day he posted AI images of himself as Jesus Christ on social media, while his own American-born Pope is calling his war immoral and 3 American cardinals condemned him on 60 Minutes. This is the highly erratic behavior of a man who has lost control of the situation and is lashing out in every direction. The blockade is an emotional reaction to a diplomatic humiliation, and emotional reactions in the middle of a war are how empires make mistakes they never recover from. So here are my 3 final chilling predictions for the days ahead. Prediction number 1. This ill-conceived blockade completely collapses within 45 days. Gas prices in America will violently push towards $6 a gallon. Republican members of Congress facing midterm elections will publicly break with the president, and Trump, who cares about the economy more than anything, will find a way to declare victory and quietly end the blockade without getting anything in return. Prediction number 2. Within 3 weeks, a Chinese flag vessel will deliberately transit the blockade line, and the U.S. Navy will not stop it. That single moment will prove to the entire world that America's blockade is unenforceable against any country willing to call the bluff, and other countries will immediately follow. Prediction number 3. 6 months from now, we will look back and see that the blockade accomplished the exact opposite of everything it intended. It did not weaken Iran, it strengthened Iran's negotiating position. It did not isolate Iran, it isolated America. It did not lower oil prices, it raised them, and it made the war harder to end. Let me leave you with the defining pattern of our time, because the pattern is what matters. China won this war by brilliantly playing all 3 sides: the military board, the diplomatic board, and the economic board. Now China's defense minister is publicly daring America to stop Chinese ships in the strait. America had already decisively lost the Islamabad talks before they even began, and we just watched those talks collapse exactly as described. Russia is currently making billions of dollars from a war it never joined, and this blockade is about to make Russia even richer. This is the tragic moment when the President of the United States actively decided to lock himself inside his own trap. He wanted the door open, he added another lock, and now he is standing helplessly on the wrong side of it. Every single action America takes in this disastrous war simply makes America weaker and its adversaries vastly stronger. The war enriched Russia, the ceasefire empowered Iran, the talks revealed Israel's control, and the blockade will unite the entire world against the one country that started this. There is a profound line I keep coming back to that captures everything about this dark moment in human history. When your only remaining strategic move is to do to yourself what your enemy has been doing to you, you have not found a strategy. You have only found a mirror. And looking into that mirror, for the very first time, you can clearly see the face of an empire that no longer recognizes itself. That is my final analysis.